Welcome to the Get Fit Guy's quick and dirty tips to slim down and shape up. My name is Brock Armstrong and I'm the Get Fit Guy. The exercise cool down is poorly understood, and today I hope to make it clear that cooling down after a workout is just as important as the warm-up and should be done on a regular basis. After any workout, whether it's cardio or weights, your muscles are tired and very quickly begin to break down in order to rebuild. That time, right after you finish exercising, is a critical time for muscle tissue repair, strength building, and overall recovery. And that, my friends, is where your cool down comes into play. The obvious and perhaps main goal of your cool down is to gradually bring your heart rate down to a closer to normal resting rate. And sure, you can accomplish this by simply walking out of the gym and sitting in your car as you drive to a coffee shop for a celebratory frappe, but there's more to it than that. Those clever folks who make time to indulge in a thorough and perhaps even luxurious cool down, well, they report that the sheer ritual of the cool down helps with mental clarity and also gives them a healthy and satisfying sense of accomplishment, and I don't think anyone gets that from sitting in a cold car in traffic. Now, not all of us have time for what I would call a luxurious cool down, but there must be a middle ground, right? To find that, let's look at the actual benefits of a good cool down and how to achieve them. And the first benefit is blood flow. Okay, here's cool down benefit number 1, blood flow. At its most basic, a cool down after a workout simply keeps your blood circulating at a comfortable rate throughout the body. After a workout ends, you would ideally continue some activity, but begin to perform it at a slower and slower pace until you're moving at a normal, non-workout pace. This can often take at least 5 minutes, but it can definitely last longer than that. Strenuous exercises cause the blood vessels in your arms and your legs to expand, bringing more blood into the legs, the hands, and the feet, and suddenly stopping, especially after a hard effort, can cause you to actually feel lightheaded, and stopping suddenly can also cause your heart rate and your blood pressure to drop rapidly, and this is one of the most obvious and perhaps most serious reasons for a cool down. The risk of actually passing out or losing consciousness is greater in very fit athletes because, well, their heart rates can slow down faster and their veins can actually hold more blood than the rest of us. Casual exercisers may not be at a very high risk of passing out, but it is still important to do something, even as simple as walking at a decent pace from the weight room to the locker room to prevent dizziness. After any physical activity, your heart is very likely to be beating faster than it normally does. Your body temperature is also higher, and your blood vessels are more dilated than usual. When your blood vessels are dilated, which is the opposite of constricted, the flow of your blood is increased due to a decrease in what we call vascular resistance. So, dilation of your arterial blood vessels decreases your overall blood pressure, temporarily anyway. This means if you stop too fast, you could potentially pass out or at least feel sick and woozy. Alright, here's cool down benefit number 2, stretching and rolling. After you complete a workout is also the perfect time to get a good stretch on because your muscles, your ligaments, tendons, and joints are still nice and warm. Stretching and foam rolling when your muscles are warm can improve your overall flexibility, which has been thought to help prevent future injury and increase our range of motion. And also, let's face it, stretching out after a hard session feels darn good. A great way to cool down is to stretch every major muscle group. I suggest holding each of the stretches for 20 to 30 seconds while doing some deep diaphragmatic breathing. And remember that stretching should never be painful. You should feel some tension in the muscle and feel it releasing as the muscle is being stretched, but you should not feel pain. If you do, relax, stretch, and breathe. Now, the next cool down benefit is muscle length. One of the byproducts of exercise is a thing that some people refer to as muscle bunching. Now, muscle bunching is more like your body wanting to stay in the position it is currently in, similar to when you stand up in the movie theater after watching a really long movie and your legs don't seem to want to straighten. Well, to understand this, let's picture someone on the leg curl machine. When that person finishes the workout, they're left with the feeling of having semi-bent legs, and if they don't do something to counteract that, it may become more than just a feeling. Cramps or muscle spasms can ensue. This feeling can actually be beneficial during a hockey game or while you're on a long bike ride because you want the position that activity puts you in to feel normal for the duration of the event. But between training sessions or games, this feeling can lead to hypertonic muscles, which is the amount of contraction that remains even when the muscle is not actively working. It can also lead to increased risk of muscle strain, or with an even longer term view, an actual loss of joint range of motion. And I probably don't need to tell you that this can affect performance adversely. A tight muscle is a less efficient muscle that produces less force and power. Now, the next cool down benefit is the mental aspect. Mental recovery is an often overlooked part of the workout. Sure, we all lead busy lives, and it can be difficult to allocate the time that we need to adequately relax and let our mind calm down after a hard workout. But relaxation techniques are extremely useful tools that help you with recovery and even in preparation for your next workout. Even if you just take a few minutes to do some deep breathing, some meditation, or a few yoga poses, this can help you reflect on your performance during this session and to mentally prepare you for the next session. Taking the time to process what you just accomplished, where you succeeded and where you failed, what felt good and what needs more work, is an important part of making progress as an athlete. And the cool down is the perfect time to incorporate this important part of the mental game. I strongly encourage the athletes that I coach to write a few post-activity comments immediately after each workout. We can then review those notes at the end of each week before I plan out their next week. In his book, Mass Made Simple, author and bodybuilder Dan John says, "I've had cool downs that consisted of me sitting on a bench for a long time trying to figure out how to drive home. I've also had long, lovely cool downs of sauna, steam, and whirlpool." He goes on to point out a simple but overlooked point. The cool down is a transition from the gym back to real life. He goes on to say, "It is a good time to do more mobility work and maybe even work out some kinks. I've worked on technical things during a cool down and found it effective for me to unwind from the load. Do something for a few minutes to make sure your heart rate has slowed down and your brain can make two connected thoughts." You know, for a long time, we coaches would tell our athletes and our clients that they needed to do a cool down so they wouldn't get sore the next day. And it turns out, although I still swear that it helps me, that notion is not supported by science. In a study that looked at the effect of a warm-up and cool-down exercise on delayed onset muscle soreness, or DOMS, in the quadricep muscles, a group of 36 active adults were put through a difficult lunge workout while holding barbells. One of the groups of volunteers warmed up beforehand by riding a stationary bike for about 20 minutes. Another group didn't warm up, but they did do a cool-down after the exercise. Again, they casually rode a bike for 20 minutes. The remainder of the volunteers lunged and then immediately hit the showers. The next day, all of the volunteers did a pain threshold test in which their muscles were prodded until they reported discomfort. The volunteers who did the warm-up were relatively pain-free. The folks who did the cool-down had a much lower pain threshold, which means it took less of the prodding to actually cause them pain. In fact, they were in the same amount of pain as the control group who skipped both the warm-up and the cool-down. Now, another study that looked at the effect of immediate post-training activity and passive recovery interventions on aerobic performance and lower limb flexibility put 31 professional soccer players through benchmark tests of vertical leap, sprinting speed, agility, and leg muscle flexibility before taking part in a normal soccer practice. Now, after practice, they had some of the players simply sit on the bench for 20 minutes, while others did a cool down, which included 12 minutes of jogging and 8 minutes of stretching. The players repeated all of these physical tests the next day and then answered questions about how sore they were. And although the measures of muscle soreness across the groups were the same, the cool down group could actually leap higher the next day than the players who sat around for 20 minutes. And I count that as a big win for Team Cool Down. Now, the available data quite strongly suggests a cool down does not reduce post-exercise soreness, but it's also important to note that none of the scientific research shows any negative effects due to performing a cool down. All right, it's time. How to cool down effectively. Well, first, let's recap our goals. We want to bring your heart rate and your breathing back to normal. We want to prevent fainting or dizziness. We want to remove the lactic acid byproducts and metabolites which build up during vigorous activity, reduce the post-exercise tendency for muscle spasms and cramping, increase our flexibility, return our body to a normal position, and reflect on this workout and make plans for the next one. So, with that in mind, this is what I did after my killer 57-minute indoor Spinnerval cycling workout this morning. The first thing I did was, after the official part of the workout was done, I spent about 5 minutes working my way through the gears, making the cycling effort easier and easier until my breathing and my heart rate were pretty much back to normal. Then I got off the bike, I toweled myself off because I'm a pretty heavy sweater, and proceeded to stretch my calves, my hip flexors, my quads, my lumbar, my neck, and my shoulders. I did all that on my yoga mat. Then I grabbed my good old foam roller and I went to town on all the major muscle groups, doing at least 10 rolls on each body part, followed by an extra 10 rolls on all the areas that I considered to be my trouble spots. Then after putting my foam roller aside, I got myself into a comfortable kneeling position in the middle of the mat, and I proceeded to do 6 sets of box breaths. Now that I was nicely stretched out and my nervous system was good and calm, that was the perfect time for me to go and write some quick notes on how my workout went. And this is what I wrote. Great start. Nailed the paces and heart rates. At about 47 minutes in, I started to suffer and wanted to quit. So I geared up a couple cogs and took it easy for the 4th interval. Then I came back for the last set, good and strong. Then I flipped the page over on my training schedule and reviewed what workout I have planned for tomorrow. Now, I consider not only reviewing today's workout, but also previewing tomorrow's workout to be part of the cool down because, well, we can learn from today's workout and also prepare for tomorrow. I now know that I have a bike workout tomorrow morning, and that means I need to wake up at a particular time so I can get to the pool to use the awesome 50-meter lanes instead of the 25s. It also means that I can now lay out all my gear that I need before I go to bed tonight, so I don't sleepily forget my trunks once again. It also means that I can mentally begin to prepare myself for the particulars of this somewhat complicated workout. Now, although this part of the cooldown does not convey any acute effect, it does have a lasting effect on me as a whole athlete who's calm and methodical and on top of his training rather than constantly rushed and tired and haphazard. And doesn't that sound like a better way to live and a more likely way to succeed? Okay, if this all sounds like too much and not something you're likely to do, at least try this. Finish your workout by briskly walking for 2 minutes. Then perform a lunging hip flexor stretch with arms overhead. Then do a seated hamstring stretch and a series of shoulder rotations. Then, if you can spare the time, hit the foam roller for a few minutes. Let's think of it this way. You wouldn't shut the engine of your car off without first gently applying the brake, putting it into park, and taking off your seatbelt, would you? Not if you want your car to last, you wouldn't. So think of your cool down the same way. If you want your investment in your body to last longer than an old used car, you need to take care of it. After all, it's the only one you've got. Now, for more cool down info, body maintenance tips, and to join in the recovery conversation, head over to facebook.com/getfitguy or twitter.com/getfitguy, or of course, getfitguy.quickanddirtytips.com. And also, remember, you can send me questions on any topics that you want me to cover. Just write to getfitguy@quickanddirtytips.com. That's getfitguy@quickanddirtytips.com. Now, my name is Brock Armstrong, and I'm the Get Fit Guy, asking you, what are you waiting for? Go get fit.